On Monday, October 13th of this year, the last 20 living hostages in Gaza were released after 738 days in Hamas captivity. We saw many moving scenes as the former hostages reunited with loved ones. The horror stories of their captivity will come later. And despite the beauty of being reunited with family and friends, the hostages' scars, both physical and psychological, will not be easily erased. Hamas executed, butchered, and raped civilians. They murdered almost 1,200 people and took 251 hostages. After that, and while hostages remained captive, 21 nations rewarded them by recognizing the non-existent Palestinian state. Australia, Canada, France, the UK, Ireland, Norway, Spain, Mexico, and 13 others chose to reward evil. And here's the deal. We can always expect more of the thing that we reward. Those nations have made their own citizens more vulnerable. Let's work through this. The first thing I want to bring up, number one, is this. And remember this well. Evil is being rewarded, and that always leads to more evil. When we reward evil, we're not discouraging violence. We're incentivizing it. And history proves it. Prophecy warns of it. And right now, we're watching it unfold. Welcome to the Tom Hughes Report. Did their actions hasten the end of the war? Just the opposite. By encouraging the terrorists, they kept the terrorists fighting. They prolonged the war, causing even more death and destruction. President Trump hailed the new peace agreement as the historic dawn of a new Middle East and the end of an age of terror and death. He believes he is ushering in everlasting peace in the Middle East. So is the age of terror and death over? Has everlasting peace dawned in the Middle East? Sadly, the answer is no. We celebrate the end of a war and the uniting of families, but during this time, the nations of earth have sown to the wind, and they will surely reap the whirlwind. I'm not condemning President Trump. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 9, Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." We should be working toward peace, and according to Bible prophecy, is a historic dawn of a new Middle East is coming, and possibly even soon. Someday, there will be an everlasting peace in the Middle East, but that one isn't going to happen until Jesus comes back. I appreciate President Trump's work for peace, and I'm overjoyed to see the hostages released. However, this is not the beginning of an everlasting peace in the Middle East. While that is coming, a lot of things must happen first. In June of last year, the Wall Street Journal reported on a message sent from the man then known as the leader of Hamas in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, to other Hamas leaders. Sinwar was one of the main architects of the October 7th terrorist attacks in Israel. In 2024, he said, "We have the Israelis right where we want them." He would die later that year when he was discovered by the IDF soldiers on a routine patrol in Rafah. Today, Benjamin Netanyahu can look down at Sinwar's grave and say, "We have him right where we want him." Did Sinwar seriously think that they had an advantage over the Israelis? Militarily, the IDF was winning at every turn. That's not to say it was ever easy for Israeli forces. Gaza was the center of a dense web of terrorist infrastructure like nowhere else on earth. But there's no way that anyone could have looked at the Hamas military situation at any time after the October 7th attacks and say that they were winning. So what did he mean? He meant this. He meant they were winning the propaganda war. In that same communication, he pointed out the usefulness of civilian casualties. He called them necessary sacrifices. Let that sink in. That's why Hamas put military installations within schools, hospitals, mosques, apartment buildings, and other places where Israeli attacks would likely result in civilian deaths. They wanted a high death toll. That's Satan's PR machine. It runs on human suffering and death. Let's move on from number one to number two. Number two is this. Satan's PR machine runs on human suffering and global deception. Think about it. Satan doesn't just deal in brutality. He deals in perception. Lies are his weapons and propaganda is his megaphone. From war zones to newsrooms, the deception is coordinated and it is deadly. Back in June of 2019, the NATO Strategic Communications Center of Excellence published a report on Hamas' use of human shields. It said, by engaging in these acts, Hamas employs a win-win scenario. If indeed the IDF uses kinetic power and the number of civilian casualties surges, Hamas can accuse the IDF and Israel of committing war crimes, which in turn could result in the imposition of a wide array of sanctions. On the other hand, if the IDF limits its use of military power in Gaza to avoid collateral damage, Hamas will be less vulnerable to Israeli attacks. During the Cold War, American media tried hard to convince us that the U.S. and the USSR were mirror images of one another. One of the color episodes of the Andy Griffith Show, remember that? And therefore not seen as much, but I used to love watching the Andy Griffith Show. But it featured a U.S.-Russian summit meeting that, through weird circumstances, comes to be held at Andy's house in Mayberry. I mean, do you remember that episode? The meeting, it makes no progress until the antagonists get together over a midnight snack of Aunt Bee's cold fried chicken. It's a feel-good story that says we're all just folks. Even communists, there are no bad guys. In many ways, humans are alike, but we are also different. Our cultures are different. Our outlooks are different. Compare Israel and the United States to the people of Gaza. Do we really think alike? If you're the father of a military-age male, imagine getting a call like this, and this is a literal conversation that took place. Listen to this. Hi, Dad. Open my WhatsApp now, and you will see all those killed. Look how many I killed with my own hands. Your son killed Jews. Imagine that you reply, may Allah protect you. Then your son says, Dad, I'm talking to you from a Jewish woman's phone. I killed her and I killed her husband. I killed 10 with my own hands. Dad, I killed 10. 10 with my own hands. Put mom on. May Allah bless you, both parents say in response to their son's celebration of murder and gore. Can you imagine telling your mom about the murder spree that you've embarked on and having her respond, I wish I was with you. Mom, your son is a hero, he says, kill, kill, kill. To the dad, he says, hold your head up. Father, hold your head up. At last, the father says, what you, or I might say, come back, come back. What do you mean come back, replies the son. There's no going back. It is either death or victory. Open the WhatsApp, see the dead, open it, open WhatsApp on my phone and see the dead, how I killed them with my own hands. I mean, that conversation literally took place. This is sick. It's absolutely sick. Human beings are made in the image of God, and each should be treated with dignity. But that does not mean all people or all cultures are the same. The Palestinian culture is night and day different from the Judean Christian-inspired norms of our homeland, though something like their culture may be closer than we have imagined. On American universities, for example, it has been the goal of many professors to knock the smugness out of young Americans by convincing them that they are not special at all. To do that, they emphasize everything wrong with the United States, flaws in its history and its heroes. At the same time, they justify the actions of those once considered enemies. Along the way, Hitler becomes a good guy and Churchill a bad guy, as a guest on the Tucker Carlson show recently said to Tucker's applause. It starts with the fallacy that we are all the same, but the twisting does not stop there. It turns things completely around. It changes them from we're the same, to a renewed belief in evil, except now the evil ones are us, just as Isaiah warned of the time coming when right would be called wrong and wrong would be called right. They say Americans and the West are worse than anyone else. They blame everything wrong in the world on us. Like other humans, Americans are flawed sinners. You'll find bad things if you look close enough, but that's not enough for these guys. They also make stuff up in order to prove how wicked we are and how virtuous everyone else is. They lie. Well, let's move on to number 3. The war on truth is fueled by cultural indoctrination. This isn't just misinformation. It's indoctrination. It's an orchestrated campaign to flip truth on its head, vilify the righteous, and normalize darkness. Paul said it this way in Romans chapter 1. He said, they will suppress the truth in unrighteousness. In other words, the truth won't even be allowed to come out. But in that same chapter, good becomes evil and evil good. Romans chapter 1, verses 28 and 29 puts it like this: even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind. Other versions describe such minds as reprobate, depraved, worthless, evil, base, and corrupt. What for? To do those things, Paul wrote, which are not fitting, being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and evil-mindedness. It makes a perfect environment for Satan's PR machine, a perfect environment for the most extreme and bizarre deceptions, like the idea that men can become pregnant and that it is virtuous to force young women to share locker rooms, showers, and bathrooms with men. And it makes a perfect environment in which to convince people that Hamas is an organization of freedom fighters using rape, murder, and hostage taking in a heroic struggle against an oppressive Israeli government. Even though minorities in Israel are universally treated with dignity and respect, light years better than any of the surrounding Islamic regimes.
At Hope for Our Times, our mission is to spread the hope of Jesus Christ through the Word of God. Your generous contributions empower us to create impactful videos and resources that offer hope during uncertain times. We invite you to partner with us in our mission. If you feel called to support us, please visit our website at hopeforourtimes.com, where you'll find various ways to contribute financially. Additionally, donations can be sent by mail to Hope for Our Times, 1281 North State Street, Suite A311, San Jacinto, California, 92583. Your partnership directly fuels our efforts to develop new resources and connect with a wider audience. By partnering with us, you become an integral part of our mission to share the hope of Jesus Christ with a world in need. And now let's return to the Tom Hughes Report.
On Sunday, June 22nd of this year, 2025, a suicide bomber attacked a Greek Orthodox church in the Dwayla section of Damascus, Syria. He killed 22 people and severely injured dozens of worshipers. Some of the injured were mere infants. It was part of a wave of Muslim on Christian violence in Syria since the end of the Assad regime there. Commonweal magazine, get this, Commonweal magazine, a liberal Catholic publication, wrote an article ostensibly about Christians under siege in the Middle East. The article began by recounting the horrible story of the attack in Syria. It told that story without mentioning that the attacker was a Muslim. And in the next paragraph, Commonweal tells another horror story, this one almost entirely false, and this is what they wrote. On July 14th, nearly 3 weeks to the day after the Dwayla attack, Jewish settlers stormed Taba, the oldest Christian village in the occupied West Bank. They set the 5th century Greek Orthodox Church of St. George ablaze. Desperate calls for help from the parish priest and community members were ignored by Israeli authorities. After a few more sentences condemning Jewish settlers, they finally wrote, In an offhand, dismissive way, the Jerusalem Post denied that the attack ever took place, claiming that the fire had accidentally spread to the church from adjacent scrubland. That's the extent of their attempt to balance the story by telling both sides. They merely mention the report of a Jewish newspaper, but that's only a small part of the other side of the story. For instance, you would expect them to at least mention that there's no evidence that the church ever burned. And by the way, let me follow up with that, because I followed that story when it first happened. It was started by Muslims in that area. That the fire was started by Muslims. It was Jewish farmers who went to try and put out the fire at the church. Has anybody reported on that? No, only media people like myself. And that is the only place you see it. And again, that Commonweal magazine wouldn't even mention it was Muslim attackers there in Syria. The hypocrisy and the evil and the PR is off the charts, and it's wicked. All they had to do was look at photos from the scene. Pictures from both the ground and from drones show that there was a fire and that it had burned scrubland adjacent to the church. But the photos also show that the ancient church was unscathed, even without scorch marks or smoke damage. They don't bother to mention that other photos show Jewish settlers with firefighting equipment fighting the fire, in effect saving both the church and a Palestinian neighborhood. Settlers put out the fire. Jewish settlers put out the fire before it reached the church. Yet CBS, NBC, the Associated Press, and Reuters all reported that the church burned because Jewish settlers committed arson. Their versions of the story made Jewish settlers the bad guys because mainstream news reporters view Jewish settlers as bad guys. Saying that Israeli Jews attacked and burned a Christian church is a propaganda aimed at making American Christians feel outrage against Jews and Israel. It's part of a massive campaign that starts with Hamas, but is aided by haters of Jews around the world. The purpose of that campaign is to drive a wedge between evangelical Christians and the nation of Israel. And by the way, none of them ever retracted their story or said the truth. None of them did. But again, Satan is the father of lies, so what do we expect? But sadly, to the point that they succeed, they not only drive a wedge between evangelicals and Israel, but between evangelicals and this right here, the Bible. They want you to believe the absurd notion that Arab Muslims are pro-Christian, but the Hamas propagandists and Tucker Carlson don't tell you what happened before and after the Oslo Accords. That's when Israel turned governance of Judea, Samaria, and Gaza over to the Palestinians. While it was under Israeli rule, Christianity thrived in those areas. Under Palestinian Muslim rule, Christians are a shrinking and persecuted people. In 1990, when governed by Israel, Christians made up 60% of Judea and Samaria in the city of Bethlehem. But that changed dramatically when the Palestinians took charge following the 1993 Oslo Accords. By 2017, the Christian population of Bethlehem had fallen from 60% to 10%. But do you hear that anywhere? No, you hear the lies. You hear exactly the opposite. On November 21st of last year, 2024, the International Criminal Court issued a warrant for the arrest of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. What did they say? Check this out. They charged him with crimes of starvation as a method of warfare and of intentionally directing an attack against the civilian population, and the crimes against humanity of murder, persecution, and other inhumane acts from at least October 8, 2023 until at least May 20 of 2024. Wow, yet the ratio, get this, the ratio of civilian to military deaths in Gaza is better than any other war in modern history. If Israel was trying to attack the civilian population, why aren't there more dead? Gaza is one of the most densely populated areas on the planet. If Israel was trying to commit genocide or trying to inflict harm on the Gazan civilians, the numbers would be catastrophically higher. When the war started, there were 2.25 million people living in Gaza. According to Hamas, Israel killed 68,000 people during the war. According to President Trump, 58,000 of those were Hamas fighters. In the long, dark history of war, it is unheard of for the ratio of civilian to military casualties to be that low. People are claiming Trump made up those numbers, but is that true? Remember that the numbers of war casualties in Gaza are coming from the Hamas Health Agency. Even if Trump's numbers are not accurate, and it's an actual ratio of, let's say, 1-to-1, half Hamas, half civilian. Let's say it's just that way. Then that is still astounding. In May of 2022, get this, about 18 months before Hamas began their massacre of Jews, the UN posted its findings that 90% of deaths in a war on average are civilian casualties. Although this is denied by almost everyone in the media, you can see it right here. Look at the article. And then also remember that Hamas put women and children in the front of the battle while they ran and hid in the tunnels below. And to be certain of the evil and what these terrorists really are about, as soon as a ceasefire was official, Hamas began slaughtering the citizens in Gaza. And you can also see that right here. Check this out. You can click on it for yourself. So with that, what is this really about? In his book on democracies and death cults, Israel and the Future of Civilization, Douglas Murray wrote, "Few armies in history have had to fight a war in such a concentrated, built-up, and booby-trapped area in which the other side had deliberately placed its military infrastructure within and amid civilian buildings, including mosques, schools, homes, and hospitals. None has had to fight against an opposition whose leadership, as intercepted messages from the leader of Hamas in Gaza have made clear, sees the loss of their own civilians as desirable because of the advantages it can bring them in the war for international public opinion. Under such circumstances, it is miraculous that the IDF kept the civilian casualty count so low." The Commonweal article that I mentioned earlier went on to say, the carnage continues. Israeli airstrikes against defenseless Gazans have killed tens of thousands of children, women, the sick, and the aged. I mean, I look at this and think, this is just unbelievable, but the lies keep coming. Check this out. Omer Bartov, an Israeli-American historian who studies genocide, writes, "I'm a genocide scholar. I know it when I see it." All right, let that sink in, right? Because listen to this. Reza Pahlavi, the exiled crown prince of Iran, said, and this information point blank exposes Omer Bartov of being a main money launderer of money for terrorists. This is what Reza Pahlavi said. Again, the exiled crown prince of Iran. He said, "We located over $100 billion in undocumented funds going from Qatar, the Muslim Brotherhood, to American universities. We found $10 billion at Cornell, $1.3 billion at Texas A&M and Brown University. We found $1 billion in one program called the Choices Program, led by the same man, Professor Omer Bartov, who is a scholar of genocide, who is now arguing that Israel's committing a genocide. I know it when I see it, may be the least scholarly definition of genocide ever given." Is he kidding? Tell the self-proclaimed genocide scholar to open a dictionary and look up the word. What Israel has done in Gaza is not genocide, even though critics have been accusing Israel of genocide since long before October 7th of 2023. Yet over that time, the Palestinian population in Israel has grown like crazy. How is that genocide? Bottom line, Gaza started a war against Israel, and Israel defended itself by fighting back. That's not genocide. It's the right thing to do to protect the population. Well, let's put all of this together, all right? In a world that is drowning in propaganda, where lies shout louder than truth, It's easy to feel overwhelmed, but the good news is this: God is not surprised, and his truth will not be silenced. While Satan's PR machine is working overtime, God has already spoken. His word is not just counter-narrative, it's eternal. And truth isn't fragile, it's a person. His name is Jesus. For the word of the Lord is right, and all his work is done in truth. He loves righteousness and justice. The earth is full of the goodness of the Lord, wrote the psalmist in Psalm 33. No matter how sophisticated the lies become, no matter how loud the enemy's megaphone grows, truth will prevail because Jesus himself declared, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by me. And let me tell you, Satan wants to get rid of that truth. Jesus is not part of a PR campaign. He is the light that pierces the darkness, the Lamb who conquered death, and the soon returning King who will expose every falsehood and reign in perfect justice. So hold fast. Don't be discouraged. Don't be swayed by the spin. Lift your eyes because the Lord is faithful. As Paul writes, nevertheless, the solid foundation of God stands, having this seal: the Lord knows those who are his, and let everyone who names the name of Christ depart from iniquity. In the chaos of the enemy's messaging war, you don't need to find your voice. You need to echo his.
Imagine being in Israel as the sun is rising over the Sea of Galilee, or walking on the streets of Jerusalem, visiting the city of Nazareth, or having a Bible study in Capernaum at the Apostle Peter's house. Pastor Tom Hughes will be leading a tour to the land of Jesus. We will explore Israel together and bring the Bible to life before your very eyes. We will visit Caesarea by the sea and Joppa, where Jonah caught a boat going in the wrong direction. We'll take a boat ride on the Sea of Galilee, just as Peter did when he walked on water. We will walk on the Mount of Olives and through the Garden of Gethsemane. You will have the opportunity to explore the Temple Mount and visit at the Western Wall and even go underneath the Temple Mount. You'll be able to visit the City of David and Hezekiah's tunnel. And have you ever wanted to float on the Dead Sea or visit the cave where David cut the corner of King Saul's robe? Or perhaps spending a morning at Masada? These are just some of the once-in-a-lifetime experiences you will have when you join us on our Israel trip. Thank you for tuning in to the Tom Hughes Report. We pray today's program was a blessing to you. The purpose of the Tom Hughes Report is to guide individuals toward the hope that can only be found in a personal relationship with Jesus. We encourage you to explore our website at thetomhughesreport.com and reach out to us through the contact page. We value your feedback and would love to hear from you. A special thank you to his channel for graciously allowing us to utilize their wonderful studios for recording the Tom Hughes Report. Don't forget to explore their website at hischannel.com for an array of Christ-centered programs. Make sure to join us again next week for another insightful episode of the Tom Hughes Report. And always remember to look up and lift up your head because your redemption draws near.